Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today's topic is how I learned English in a small village. And trust me, it's not going to be one of those boring language videos filled with rules and grammar charts. No, this is my real story, my journey, my struggle, and how I made it possible, even when I had no fancy schools, no fluent English speakers around, and not even a stable internet connection. If you live in a small town or village, and you've ever thought, how can I ever learn English from here? Then this video is for you. I'm going to share every little detail, what I did, what I failed at, what worked, and how I slowly, gradually, confidently learned to speak English. And the best part? You can do it too. So let's begin. My name is Ria. I come from a small village in India, a place where most people don't even speak Hindi properly, let alone English. We had one small government school in our area, and I studied there till class 12. The teachers were kind, but English wasn't their strong point. We had English as a subject, but honestly, it felt more like memorizing than learning. When I was in 10th standard, I realized how far behind I was when I went to visit my cousin in the city. Her friends were casually speaking in English, not perfectly, but confidently, and I felt like a statue. I didn't know how to say anything beyond, "What is your name?" and "I am fine, thank you." I felt so embarrassed. That day, I made a decision. I want to speak English, not just for school, but for me, for my confidence, for my future. But the question was, how? No coaching centers in my village, no English-speaking friends, no English environment at all. But I had one thing, the will to learn. The very next day after coming back from my cousin's place, I wrote a sentence in my notebook. I want to speak English. I looked at that sentence every single day. It became my goal. I started with what I had, my school textbooks. I began reading them loudly. Even though I didn't understand half the words, I kept reading. I downloaded a free dictionary app on my old phone, and whenever I found a new word, I looked it up. I made a little word diary. Every new word, one sentence, and I used those words in my daily conversations with myself. Yes, I talked to myself. A lot. I would stand in front of the mirror and pretend I was giving a speech. Sometimes I'd imagine I was giving an interview or telling someone about my day. It was awkward, funny, and even silly at times, but it helped me remove the fear of speaking. Another big help was listening. I couldn't afford expensive courses, but YouTube became my best teacher. I didn't even understand native speakers at first. They spoke fast, and it confused me. But I started with slow English videos, stories, news in simple English, and English learning channels. I repeated everything I heard. I would pause the video, speak the line, rewind, and say it again. Subtitles were my best friends. I watched English movies with subtitles. At first, I read more than I listened. But gradually, my ears got used to the sound of the language. I picked up pronunciation, tone, and expressions. I also started journaling in English. Just one paragraph a day. Something like, "Today I went to the market with my mother. We bought vegetables. I saw a cute puppy on the way." It was basic, but that's how my brain started thinking in English. One of the biggest turning points came when I discovered language exchange apps. I found people from different countries who wanted to learn Hindi, and they helped me practice English. Some became friends, some just spoke once or twice, but every single conversation helped me. Now, let me be honest. It was not easy. There were days I felt stuck. There were days I thought, maybe I'll never speak fluently. My pronunciation felt weird. People laughed at me. Once, I tried to speak English in my school assembly, and I made mistakes. My classmates giggled, and I cried quietly in the bathroom afterward. But I didn't stop. I reminded myself, this is not about showing off. This is about me, my growth, my goals. I started focusing more on practice than perfection. And slowly, the magic happened. One day, a tourist came to our village. Everyone was confused because he didn't speak Hindi. I stepped forward and spoke to him. Not perfect English, but good enough to help him find a place to stay. That moment was everything for me. That day, I realized I had done it. I had learned English from my small village with no fancy tools, no coaching centers, just me, my phone, a notebook, and my dedication. I started helping other girls in my area. I told them what I had done. I started a small WhatsApp group where we practiced English through voice notes. We corrected each other, encouraged each other, and made it a fun game. One girl told me she spoke in English with her brother for the first time ever. Another said she gave an interview and got selected. That was the most beautiful part of this journey, helping others rise with me. So if you're watching this, and you live in a small town or village, and you think English is impossible for you, I want to tell you, it is not. You don't need perfect grammar to start. You don't need a British or American accent. You don't need a classroom. You just need to start. Talk to yourself. Listen a lot. Read what you love. Watch simple English videos. Use whatever you have. And most importantly, don't be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are not the end. They're the beginning of learning. Today, I make this video confidently in English. Not because I'm perfect, but because I'm proud of how far I've come. And if I can do it, sitting in a small village with weak network and no English-speaking environment, so can you? I believe in you. Hello again, my dear friends. I'm really happy you're still with me on this journey. I know I already shared a part of my story, but there's so much more, so many little moments that built up to who I am today. So let me take you deeper into my world and tell you even more about how I learned English in a small village. When I first started, I remember sitting on the worn-out wooden bench outside our little house early in the morning. The sky was only just lighting up, and while the rest of the village slowly stirred awake, I would be tucked away in a quiet corner with my notebook and a battered dictionary. I scribbled down new words one by one. I still remember the feel of those pages. They were like pieces of a hidden treasure map, each word leading me closer to a dream I wasn't even sure I could achieve. Even the sound of the early birds became a backdrop for my first English lessons, as I repeated words softly to myself. There were moments when the simplicity of my surroundings contrasted so vividly with the complexity of the new language I was trying to learn. I'd gaze out at the fields and trees and compare the simple beauty of nature to the intricate, often overwhelming nature of English grammar. I recall one day I was walking through a narrow dirt road, my mind swirling with phrases and idioms I'd read on my phone, and I started to speak to the wind. Today, I will conquer one more word, I whispered. It may sound silly, but that self-talk was my silent promise to not give up, no matter how many obstacles I faced. I wasn't alone in my journey, even though I often practiced speaking to myself or in front of a mirror. There was the small community around me. My parents, despite their own struggles in life, cheered me on. I remember my mother's gentle smile as she watched me flipping through my notebook, her eyes reflecting pride and worry at the same time. My father, who rarely spoke English himself, would ask me, "Ria, why is English so important?" And my answer was always heartfelt, "Because it opens up a window to the world, Papa." Their support, though expressed in simple words and gestures, became my anchor during the toughest days. I also recall vividly the first time I joined a language exchange group on WhatsApp. I had been hesitant initially. Imagine trying to be brave enough to write in English when every sentence felt like a stumble. But one day, encouraged by a friend who believed in me, I typed a hesitant greeting in a group chat filled with beginners from all over the world. There were moments of nervous silence as I awaited a response. When someone finally replied, "Welcome, Ria. It's great to have you here," it felt like a warm ray of sunshine cutting through a cloudy sky. That one message transformed my entire outlook. Slowly, the group turned into a safe space where mistakes were celebrated as necessary steps toward improvement. In that group, I met people from different cultures and backgrounds. One friend from Spain, Lucia, would share funny idioms in her language, and together we'd laugh over the many ways languages twist meanings. Another friend from Brazil, Miguel, taught me slang expressions that made my English sound lively and less textbook. With every conversation, my vocabulary expanded, and I started to think not in my native language, but in English. I began to see patterns, the rhythm of the language, and the clever humor that sometimes hid behind idioms and puns. While engaging with these new friends online was incredibly uplifting, there were also days when things didn't go so well. I remember one incident during a voice call. I had been working on my pronunciation for weeks, practicing some tricky sounds over and over again. On that call, while trying to recount a funny story about my childhood, I mispronounced a word, turning what was meant to be humorous into an awkward silence. The other person on the call paused, then said, "Can you repeat that?" My cheeks burned with embarrassment, and I felt the sting of imperfection. But instead of giving up, I took that moment as a lesson. I practiced that word until I got it right, and even then, I never let that moment define me. I learned that every mistake was simply a stepping stone, and that every error was an invitation to improve. As months went by, I developed a routine that was as much about discipline as it was about passion. Mornings became my sacred time for learning. I'd wake up, greet the sunrise, and recite a daily affirmation in English. Today, I am one step closer to my dream. The rest of the day was punctuated with small English exercises, reading a short article, writing a paragraph in my diary, or even challenging myself to describe something ordinary in as much detail as possible using new vocabulary. On weekends, I set aside extra time to watch movies, even trying to mimic the dialogue with the subtitles turned off. My accent wasn't perfect, and my grammar was sometimes off the mark, but it was my own special version of English, a language that was uniquely evolving with me. One of the most transformative experiences was when a group of tourists visited our village. They were a lively bunch from different parts of the world, and their presence awakened a sense of adventure in all of us. I still remember the day clearly, the vivid colors of their clothes, the mix of accents, and the excitement in the air. As they struggled to communicate with the locals due to language barriers, I felt a quiet determination rise within me. I stepped forward and greeted them in English. "Hello, how can I help you today?" My voice trembled ever so slightly, but I carried it out with all the confidence I could muster. The gratitude on their faces was a moment that I will cherish forever. It was proof that my hard work was paying off and that my English was becoming a bridge, connecting worlds that would have otherwise remained separate. That encounter sparked a fire in me. I began to see English not just as a subject to study, but as a powerful tool that could change my life. I started volunteering with the local community center, organizing informal language classes for young girls and boys. I taught them the basics that I had learned, creating playful games and interactive sessions that made learning fun. We would take turns speaking in English, creating stories together, and laughing over the inevitable mispronunciations and funny errors. Watching their eyes light up when they finally managed to say a tricky word or form a complete sentence filled me with the same sense of empowerment that I had felt during my own journey. The community sessions were held under a large banyan tree in the courtyard of our village center. That tree, with its sprawling branches and ancient roots, came to symbolize the growth and resilience required to learn something new. As I explained English words to the little ones, I realized that teaching them was teaching myself too. Every time I had to break down a complex idea into something understandable, my grasp of the language deepened. It was a symbiotic relationship. My students learned, and I learned alongside them. There were nights when I'd sit under the starlit sky, feeling the cool breeze of the countryside, and I'd practice speaking out loud. I'd recite lines from the books I had read, or sometimes I'd make up stories about magical villages and brave heroines. The act of speaking English became a nightly ritual that brought me both solace and excitement. I discovered that language was not merely about communication, it was a form of art, a way to express the deepest corners of my heart and mind. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of doubt when self-criticism threatened to dampen my spirit. I'd wonder if all my efforts were in vain. Some days, the notebooks would fill up with red marks from teachers at school who pointed out errors, and I'd feel discouraged. But every setback, every moment of insecurity, became the foundation of my perseverance. I learned that growth often comes wrapped in discomfort, and that every hurdle I overcame made me a little stronger. I remember one particular afternoon that stands out. It was a sweltering summer day, and I was sitting at our local tea stall, a humble, crowded space where people gathered to share news and jokes. I overheard a group of young men discussing something in English, a conversation that seemed effortless to them. I felt a pang of jealousy mixed with admiration. Mustering all my courage, I approached them and asked if I could join their conversation. At first, they were a bit amused, partly because of my accent and partly because of my timid introduction. But slowly, they began to share parts of the conversation, and soon I was contributing with my own opinions. That day, I learned that language is not about perfection, it's about connection. The laughter, the shared moments, and even the occasional teasing helped me shed the fear of making mistakes. It was liberating to be part of a conversation, to contribute, and to see that everyone, regardless of their native language, was just trying to communicate and be understood. Over time, I noticed subtle changes in myself. I was no longer the shy girl who used to shy away from speaking up, even in my own classroom. I began to volunteer in public speaking events, sharing my story not just as a lesson in language, but as a testament to the power of resilience. I traveled to nearby cities for competitions, where I recited poems, told short stories, and even engaged in friendly debates in English. Each outing was a small victory, a confirmation that my voice was worth hearing, that my journey was valid. When I returned to our village after these events, I carried with me a renewed sense of purpose and an unbreakable belief that even a small village girl could shape her destiny through determination and hard work. My experiences eventually blossomed into a passion for the beauty of diverse expressions in English. I started exploring literature, reading novels by authors from different corners of the world. I was fascinated by how words could paint entire worlds on a blank page. I'd spend hours in the local library, reading everything I could get my hands on, and slowly the stories began to fill my mind with vibrant images and rich emotions. The more I read, the more I understood that every language has its own soul. And as I immersed myself in English, I found that I was not just learning a language, but also discovering different cultures, ideologies, and ways of life. One vivid memory that remains etched in my heart was when I read my very first English novel cover to cover. I felt an immense sense of achievement and wonder. It was as if I had unlocked a secret door to a world filled with endless possibilities. The characters, their struggles, their triumphs, all resonated with me on a deep level. That experience not only boosted my confidence, but also ignited a spark of ambition. I began writing short stories, pouring my thoughts into words, and sharing them on social media. I even started a blog where I documented my journey, the lessons I learned, and the dreams I was building with every English word I mastered. As the months turned into years, the transformation was undeniable. There were days when I would catch myself thinking in English without even realizing it. I would dream in English. The language that once felt foreign and intimidating was now as natural as the gentle hum of my village's daily life. I'd wake up, greet the day, and narrate my thoughts in English, feeling a thrill with every coherent sentence that formed in my mind. It was a surreal yet incredibly empowering feeling, a silent celebration of the progress I had made through countless hours of dedication and perseverance. At times, I'd reflect on how my journey paralleled the rhythms of nature around me. Just like the seasons changed in our village, so did my understanding of English evolve. In spring, when the village was full of new beginnings, I was learning the fundamentals, simple words and phrases. In summer, like the long, hot days filled with energy, I immersed myself in conversations and started overcoming my fear of speaking. Come autumn, I was refining my skills, much like the harvest, collecting every newly learned word as a fruit of my hard work. And finally, in winter, when everything seemed to quiet down, I took the time to review and refine, solidifying everything I had learned. This natural rhythm provided me with a steady pace, teaching me that language learning, like nature, has its own cycle of growth and renewal. One particularly transformative experience was the day I decided to join a local talent show organized in our village. It was a nerve-wracking idea because, until then, I had only spoken confidently in front of small groups or on my phone. The thought of performing in front of a larger audience, many of whom wouldn't be used to hearing a girl from a small village speak in fluent English, was both exciting and terrifying. I chose to perform a short monologue, a piece I had written about hope, courage, and the transformative power of language. I spent weeks practicing. Every night after the chores were done and the world outside quieted down, I rehearsed in front of the mirror until my words finally felt true and fluid. When the day of the event came, I stepped onto that small stage with butterflies in my stomach. As I began speaking, something magical happened. The fear melted away and was replaced by a radiant confidence that had been nurtured over countless lonely mornings and long nights of practice. The audience was captivated, not by perfect grammar or flawless pronunciation, but by genuine emotion and determination. That night, every cheer, every clap reminded me that the language was mine, and it had the power to bring hearts together, no matter the imperfections. Throughout this journey, the language exchange group continued to be my pillar of support. We shared our progress regularly, with each conversation unfolding like a mini celebration of our collective growth. I remember a particularly memorable exchange with Lucia, my friend from Spain, who was also learning English. We started a quirky challenge. Every week, we would pick one English tongue twister and try to master it. It began as a playful exercise, a joke between friends, but soon it turned into a ritual that sharpened our pronunciation and provided endless fun. We'd laugh over our mistakes, recording our attempts, and comparing who could say it better. It was not only a language lesson, but a reminder that learning can be playful and joyful, even when it pushes you out of your comfort zone. There were also moments when technology posed its own set of challenges. In our village, network connectivity was never reliable. There were days when the internet would drop right in the middle of a video call, or when my favorite English learning channel would buffer endlessly. I remember the frustration of watching a movie on a borrowed phone, only to have the video freeze during an important dialogue scene. However, those technological hiccups taught me resourcefulness. I started to download lessons whenever I had a stable connection, and I would record them on an old voice recorder so that I could play them back even when the internet was down. Instead of seeing these as setbacks, I began to appreciate them as opportunities to adapt and learn in creative ways. I learned to manage with less, and in doing so, I discovered just how resourceful and determined I could be when faced with obstacles beyond my control. As I continued to grow in my proficiency, I also began to explore the more emotional aspects of language. English, with its wide range of expressions, allowed me to articulate feelings I had never been able to share before. I started writing letters to myself, reflecting on my journey, the challenges, and the triumphs. In one letter, I wrote, "Dear Ria, every mistake you make is a stepping stone to greatness. Don't you dare give up, because even when the words seem to escape you, your heart is telling a story that is worth sharing." Over time, these letters became a treasured diary of my transformation, a poignant reminder that every spoken word, every written sentence, carried with it the power of hope. One of the most rewarding parts of this journey was realizing that language connects people across continents and cultures. I vividly remember a day when I received an email from a viewer who had watched one of my earlier videos. Her name was Amina, and she lived in a remote village in Africa. In her email, she told me how she had been inspired to start learning English after watching my story. We exchanged messages for weeks, discussing everything from local customs to global dreams. Through our correspondence, I learned that despite the geographical distance, our challenges were similar, our dreams aligned, and our aspirations resonated. It was in those moments that I truly felt that language was a bridge, an unspoken bond that united all of us, learners, dreamers, and hopeful souls worldwide. There were also times when I sought inspiration from unexpected places. I began to attend local gatherings where elders would share stories of their youth in our native language. I would listen intently, and then, in the quiet after the stories ended, I'd try to retell them in English. It was an exercise that connected me to my roots while simultaneously expanding my linguistic repertoire. I learned that language is not just about vocabulary and grammar. It's about the stories that define us, the emotions that drive us, and the memories that stay with us forever. My journey into English eventually had me exploring new areas of creativity as well. I started experimenting with video blogs where I would narrate scenes from my village, the busy market, the serene river, the vibrant festivities during our local festivals, in English. I captured the laughter of children playing, the gentle rhythm of daily life, and the resilience of people who, despite limited resources, embraced the world with open hearts. I realized that every corner of life had a story, and the English language provided me a canvas to paint those stories in vivid hues. It wasn't just about learning a language anymore. It was about telling the tale of my existence, of a small village girl with big dreams, and of every soul who dares to rise above their circumstances. There was also an unexpected transformation in how I perceived myself. I went from being the quiet girl at the back of the classroom to a spirited voice on stage. I would often think back to those early days when I was forced to balance self-doubt with ambition. Now, whenever I see myself in the mirror, I don't just see a girl from a small village. I see a fighter, a learner, a storyteller whose life is marked by every effort made to step out of her comfort zone. I started participating in events and debates whenever the opportunity arose, using English as a medium to challenge ideas and explore new perspectives. Whether it was discussing the latest world news or sharing local experiences from our humble village, every conversation was a testament to how far I had come. I also began exploring formal education opportunities that once felt like distant dreams. With renewed confidence, I applied for scholarships, attended workshops, and even gave presentations at local forums. I vividly remember one scholarship interview where I was asked why I wanted to learn English. I told the panel, "Because in English, I have found the key that unlocks doors to endless knowledge and opportunity. Through this language, I am not just learning words. I am learning the art of communicating beyond borders." That interview, and many like it, reinforced my belief that the struggle was worth every moment, every challenge, and every triumph. As my journey continued, the community I had nurtured became bigger than I had ever expected. The little language club under the banyan tree expanded to include more students, a group of dedicated learners who came together every weekend to share not just English lessons, but parts of their dreams, hopes, and aspirations. We discussed everything, from our favorite books to our future plans, sometimes in broken phrases, and sometimes in confident articulation. Every session was filled with a unique mix of laughter and earnest learning, a reminder that the beauty of language lies in its imperfections and its ability to bring people together. There were also moments when I found inspiration in solitude. I'd take long walks along the dusty roads, letting the quiet hum of nature guide my thoughts. During these walks, I would practice describing everything around me in English: the chirping birds, the rustling leaves, the distant sound of a tractor. In those isolated moments, my thoughts flowed freely, unbounded by the fear of being judged. It was as if the entire world had become my classroom, a place where every sound and every sight told a story in English. I must share with you that some nights were filled with tears, tears born out of frustration, when no matter how hard I tried, the words just wouldn't come out right. I remember sitting alone by the dim light of a kerosene lamp, rereading my notes and feeling overwhelmed by the vastness of the language. But with every tear, I also discovered a wellspring of strength. I learned that the beauty of language learning is not in perfection, but in persistence. Every mispronounced word was a badge of honor, every error a sign of my relentless effort to break free of my limitations. As I grew more comfortable in English, I started to experiment with humor, adding a touch of lightness to my conversations. I began incorporating jokes, puns, and even playful self-deprecation into my speech. I'd often say, "My tongue is like a roller coaster. It loops and twists in ways that surprise even me." These little moments of humor not only eased the tension when I made a mistake, but they also showed others that learning a language could be fun and that the journey itself was a series of joyful mishaps and unexpected breakthroughs. Through this entire process, I learned that English isn't just a language, it's a living, breathing part of who I am. It represents every struggle, every lesson, and every tiny victory along the way. I learned that the road to fluency is paved with countless hours of practice, a heart full of hope, and a community that believes in you, whether it's an online group of strangers who become lifelong friends or the supportive voices from your own village who remind you that every step forward is a win. Now, as I stand before you and share my story in clear, confident English, I can't help but marvel at how far I've come. Every day, I continue to learn something new, a word, a phrase, or even a subtle nuance in tone that adds flavor to my speech. And every day, I pay forward the lessons I have learned by encouraging others. I get messages from viewers, like you, who say, "Your story gave me the courage to start my journey." And that, to me, is the most rewarding part of all. If you're watching this, I want you to know that you are capable of more than you imagine. Language is not a barrier, it's a bridge. It connects us, it empowers us, and it tells a story of resilience and hope. Every mistake is a lesson, every challenge is an opportunity, and every word you speak in English, no matter how imperfect, is a testament to your strength and your determination to learn. In reflecting on my journey, I realized that learning English in a small village taught me lessons far beyond grammar rules and vocabulary lists. It taught me about passion, about perseverance, and about the beauty of self-discovery. It revealed that sometimes the environment that seems limiting can be the most nurturing ground for dreams. The dusty roads, the clear night skies, and even the slow pace of life became the backdrop for a transformation that I now carry with pride. As our conversation continues today, I invite you to share your own experiences. What challenges have you faced while learning something new? How have you managed to overcome them? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I always love reading your stories and learning about your journeys, because together, we build a community that thrives on hope, courage, and the power of perseverance. Before I wrap up today's video, I want to leave you with a final thought, a message that I hope will echo in your heart every time you feel uncertain about the future. No matter where you come from, be it a bustling city or a quiet village, you have within you the strength to achieve greatness. Your journey may be filled with obstacles, but each hurdle is not the end. It's a stepping stone to new possibilities. Trust in your abilities, and remember that every word you speak, every lesson you learn, makes your voice more powerful. Thank you for being a part of my world and for walking this path with me. Your support gives me the strength to keep sharing my story and to reach out to more people who believe in the transformative power of language. I hope my journey inspires you to pursue your own passions, be it mastering a language or chasing any dream that sets your heart on fire. So here's to every trial and every triumph, to every moment of doubt and every spark of hope. To me, learning English wasn't just about acquiring a new way to speak. It was about discovering who I truly am and realizing that even from a small village, you can have a voice that resonates around the world. I invite you to stay connected. Follow my journey by subscribing to my channel. Join our little community where we share not only our language progress, but also our dreams, our creative expressions, and our everyday adventures. Together, we are more than just learners. We are a family bound by the courage to step beyond boundaries and write our own stories. As the seasons passed, my world grew even larger than that dusty village, with its familiar roads and simple lives. I began to notice that every conversation I had, every new word I learned, was shaping me in ways I never expected. It wasn't just about speaking English, it was about growing up, understanding people, and reshaping my entire view of the world. I remember sitting on the little wooden porch outside my house during a warm summer evening, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink, and thinking about the day I'd first dared to speak up in English. The memory was vivid, the shaky yet determined voice that broke the silence, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, and the wide, encouraging smiles of the few who listened. In those quiet moments, I realized that every struggle I had faced was a stepping stone toward being who I am today. The community around me began to recognize the small changes, too. Neighbors who once only exchanged pleasantries now started asking me about the movies I watched or the books I read in English. They were curious, sometimes amused, sometimes inspired. I'd sit with the elders at the tea stall and explain, using the simplest words in my newly formed vocabulary, the stories of far-off lands, incredible adventures, and even scientific wonders that I'd discovered through English texts. Their eyes would light up with amazement, and I'd see that spark of hope, as if my words, though imperfect, bridged a gap between my tiny world and the vast universe beyond. One day, during one of these gatherings, an older man named Mr. Sharma told me, "Ria, you have given us a new window to look out into the world. Every time you speak, it's like you're inviting us along on your journey." His words, simple yet profound, wrapped around me like a warm shawl on a cold night. In that moment, I realized that language, English in my case, had a power no textbook could capture. It wasn't just a means of communication, it was a way to share dreams, to open hearts, and to build bridges between generations. This encouragement pushed me even harder to refine my skills and share more of what I had learned. I started to experiment with different forms of expression. I began writing poems that captured the spirit of my village, the rustling paddy fields, the laughter of children playing in the monsoon rain, and the quiet pride of our festivals. I read my poems aloud during community events, sometimes at the local fair, sometimes at family gatherings, and once even on a small radio channel that broadcast locally. While my pronunciation was still a work in progress, every syllable was filled with passion and the unmistakable rhythm of a heart that truly believed in the transformative power of storytelling. At times, new challenges would still arise. There were afternoons when I struggled to express complex feelings in English. I'd sit by the cool river that bordered our village, watching the water glisten in the sunlight, feeling the mix of hope and frustration that came with every new word I was trying to capture. In those moments, I remembered all the nights I spent practicing in front of the mirror, the gentle self-affirmations that said, "It's okay to be imperfect. Every word is progress." I kept a little box on my bedside table where I stored mementos, a pressed flower here, a handwritten note there, each one representing a small victory over the fear of failure. They weren't just tokens, they were the tangible proof that my journey, with all its struggles, was indeed moving forward. Over time, I also started connecting more deeply with technology, even if the network in our village remained unpredictable. I managed to save and record voice notes on my phone, and later on an old tape recorder that belonged to my grandmother. I listened to these recordings during long, quiet nights, when the only sound was the chirp of crickets. Hearing my voice grow steadier, my words clearer, gave me a sense of accomplishment that no classroom or formal test could ever replicate. With every playback, I could compare and see the gradual evolution of my accent, the subtle shifts in my tone, and the increasing ease with which I formed sentences. It was like watching a time lapse of my own growth, a series of small miracles unfolding over time. Another transformative moment came unexpectedly. I was invited to attend a regional cultural event in a nearby town, an opportunity that had never before been available to someone from a small village like mine. With my heart pounding, I traveled on a crowded bus, clutching my notebook and my little recorder, feeling both excited and terrified at the thought of conversing with people from other regions. The event was a blend of art, music, and dialogue. I stood amidst people who spoke in crisp English, and despite my initial reservations, I soon found that my unique accent and humble origins became a conversation starter. A kind volunteer, noticing my determination, handed me a microphone and asked if I'd like to share a short story about my village life. Though my hands trembled and my voice wavered initially, I soon felt an undeniable surge of energy as I recounted the tale of a small, beloved tea stall where everyone came together to share dreams and laughter. The applause that followed wasn't just for the words I spoke. It was a celebration of all the hidden journeys from villages like mine, journeys that often go unnoticed, but are rich with hope and resilience. That day, I encountered a group of young learners who reminded me of my younger self. They were hesitant to speak, their English filled with pauses and uncertainties. I took a moment to sit with them under a large banyan tree, the very same tree that had witnessed many of my early practice sessions, and shared my own story about the first day I dared to dream and the many stumbling blocks along the way. I encouraged them to embrace their mistakes, to laugh at their quirks, and to see every error not as a failure, but as a lesson in disguise. Their bright eyes and eager expressions gave me a renewed sense of purpose. I saw in them the raw potential of a language that, if nurtured with patience and heart, could become as natural as the songs of the birds at dawn. As my journey with English continued, I discovered more about myself, beyond the language. I began to unravel thoughts and dreams that had long been locked away. I started making plans for the future, like applying for scholarships to study further, or even exploring careers that relied on international communication. Every application I wrote, every interview I attended, brought its own set of challenges and triumphs. I remember preparing for one particularly important interview, sitting on a creaky chair in a small community center, practicing responses until they felt less like rehearsed lines and more like parts of who I truly was. I recounted stories from my childhood, shared my passion for literature, and spoke earnestly about the hope I had found in every word spoken. Though I didn't win every scholarship, each attempt strengthened my resolve and taught me that every setback was simply a prelude to a greater comeback. These experiences slowly began to shape not only my command of English, but also my identity. I realized that language was a mirror reflecting both our vulnerabilities and our strengths. I began to appreciate the subtle differences between how I thought in my native tongue and how I expressed myself in English. Sometimes I would sit quietly, meditating on a familiar proverb from my village, then trying to find its equivalent in English. It wasn't about direct translation. It was about capturing the essence of the wisdom embedded in our culture. In these moments, I bridged two worlds, the traditional and the modern, the local and the global, finding that they could coexist in harmony. This duality enriched my perspective, making me a storyteller capable of weaving intricate tapestries from diverse threads of thought and emotion. I also started to reach out to local educators and community leaders, some of whom had long wished to improve their own English skills but had never found the time or resources. Organizing small workshops became a passion. I would gather a handful of interested villagers, and we'd meet in the community center or even under the shade of the banyan tree. I'd prepare simple exercises, fun games, and even role-playing scenarios that involved everyday situations, from ordering food at a makeshift restaurant to negotiating during market days. These sessions weren't perfect. Sometimes my instructions would be jumbled, or my examples too rooted in what I had learned on my own. But the smiles, the shared laughter, and the visible transformation in my community were worth every moment of effort. I learned from them too. Every question they asked, every experiment in pronunciation or sentence structure offered me new perspectives on how language could be both a tool and a treasure. In the silence of many early mornings and the warmth of countless afternoons, I began to see that learning English was like planting a seed in a field. At first, the seed is hidden in the dark earth, vulnerable and unseen. But with careful nurturing, a bit of water and sunlight, it sprouts, slowly, persistently, transforming into something vibrant and beautiful that can weather any storm. I realized that my voice, once timid and tentative, had grown strong enough to echo far beyond my village. It became a symbol of possibility, a proof that with passion and perseverance, even the most challenging journeys could blossom into extraordinary adventures. As I continued to share my story online, the world responded in ways I could have never imagined. Messages started to pour in from other small villages, different countries, and cultures far removed from my own. People told me how my voice gave them the strength to try speaking in a language they had long considered out of reach. A young girl from a remote area in Africa wrote to me, telling me that despite having limited resources, she had started her own little group to practice English every evening. Another viewer from a small town in Eastern Europe said that my journey made her realize that learning wasn't reserved for privileged classrooms, but was a right for every dreamer. These interactions formed a vast tapestry of shared human experiences, a constellation of voices that collectively affirmed that language was meant to unify, to empower, and to open doors to a brighter future. The journey never came without its moments of introspection and self-doubt. There were times when I questioned if I was sacrificing too much of my identity by adopting a language so different from the one that had grown up with me. I would reminisce about traditional songs, folklore, and the comforting cadence of my mother tongue. But I soon learned that identity isn't diluted by learning another language. It is enriched. I discovered that every language I spoke was a unique facet of my personality, a vibrant color added to the ever-evolving mosaic of who I was. Speaking English didn't take away my roots. It made them even stronger by allowing me to share them with others across the globe. I began recording more detailed video diaries in which I shared not only my successes, but also my ongoing struggles. Truly, every stumble in pronunciation, every awkward silence, every misunderstood phrase. I encouraged my viewers to see the beauty in imperfection and to celebrate every little victory. These videos became a cherished archive of my progress, a log of every effort made under the sweltering sun or during the quiet hours of the night. I wanted my viewers to know that it was okay to fail, that each mistake was simply a chapter in the epic story of growth, and that the journey was as important as the destination. In my quieter moments, I would often take a walk down the dirt roads of my village, the same pathways that had witnessed my initial timid steps into a world of big dreams. I'd pause by the old well, listen to the distant chatter of children, and imagine a future where my voice could inspire countless others. I felt profoundly connected to everything around me: the whispering wind, the rustling leaves, and the rhythmic heartbeat of the land. Every step, every sound, every lingering glance from a passerby reminded me that the language I had come to love was not just a means of expression, but a living chronicle of my journey, a reminder that even the smallest voices could echo powerfully. Looking back, I realize that this journey has forever changed the way I see the world. I now approach each new challenge with a sense of curiosity and courage. I continue to learn every day, whether by reading an article, watching a new film, or simply engaging in a heartfelt conversation with someone from a different background. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to evolve, every story a chance to grow. And in every moment, I remember those early days when a small village girl looked up at the wide sky and dared to dream big dreams. So here I stand, a storyteller who has found her own unique voice in English, a voice that, while still imperfect, carries the echoes of every heartfelt practice session, every shared moment of joy, every tear shed in private, and every smile exchanged in public. I stand here not as an expert, but as a living example that language is less about flawless grammar and more about genuine connection. It is about expressing the soul of who we are, no matter where we come from. As I continue my journey, I invite you to join me in this adventure of words, ideas, and endless possibilities. I want you to feel encouraged to reach out, ask questions, and share your own stories, because every shared experience adds another vibrant thread to our collective tapestry. I hope that by listening to my story, you see that every effort, every challenge, and every spark of inspiration is a stepping stone toward not just learning English, but also understanding life itself in richer, more profound ways. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this extended chapter of my journey, a journey that continues to unfold with every conversation, every new word learned, and every heart that resonates with the idea that no matter how humble your beginnings, the power of determination and hope can transform your world. I hope my journey has sparked something within you, a belief that you too can overcome challenges, bridge divides, and let your voice be heard, whether in English or any language that tells your unique story. As we move forward together, let these moments remind us all that every word, every sentence, and every expression is a testament to our resilience. Let them be a celebration of every individual who dares to dream, to challenge the status quo, and to embrace the transformative magic of learning. For in every heart lies the potential to inspire, to connect, and to shine brighter than we ever imagined. And so, my dear friends, let's keep the conversation alive. Let's continue to share our journeys, our hopes, our moments of triumph and vulnerability. Because in doing so, we not only nurture our own growth, but also light up the path for others who might be lost in the vast silence of self-doubt. Keep speaking, keep dreaming, and remember that every step you take toward learning is a victory, a step closer to a world that belongs to all of us. Thank you for sharing this time with me, for believing in the power of language, and for being a part of this ever-growing, supportive family. I promise that, as long as I have words to share and dreams to pursue, I will continue to add new chapters to this journey. And even if I stumble along the way, I will always rise again, because every moment of perseverance transforms a small village dream into a voice that echoes far beyond its humble origins. Until our next heartfelt conversation, I leave you with the enduring reminder that every person's journey is remarkable. No matter how slow or uncertain the path may seem, the courage to take that first step, the willingness to learn, to stumble, and then to stand tall, is what truly defines us. Keep believing in your potential, stay curious, and let each word you speak be a spark that illuminates the vast canvas of your dreams. This is my continuing story, shared with love and gratitude, and I hope it inspires you to add your own notes to this symphony of voices, one word at a time.